Listen up, people. There's something the online left has forgotten, okay? Ancient knowledge, all right? You guys played Warhammer 40k? You know how the Adeptus Mechanicus are always trying to dig up ancient forbidden technology on lost worlds to recover Imperial tech from 10,000 years ago? That's what we're about to discover, okay? We're the Adeptus Mechanicus, and we're on planet Epsilon 96b38472, all right? And we're digging a big hole, all right? And we found something, okay? And the thing that we found is a little sheet of paper, okay? And the sheet of paper says in cursive with it starts with one of those really big letters, like the block print letters that they used for medieval writing, okay? The letter says this, okay? Context matters. That's what the letter says. And the Omni priest holding it up, immediately their hands start shaking, and a fucking Inquisitorium from outer orbit fires an ion cannon to destroy the forbidden knowledge. Yeah, no, instantly, fucking Exterminatus, the planet's atmosphere is ignited as an orbital bombardment. This is, I don't know why the left has given up on this. Okay? So, because this won't be, the context won't be visible in the segment that I'm cutting out right now, okay? We're going over STL's horrible behavior, which turns out a lot of it was faked, and the stuff that actually is bad was overblown, as always. And, there's a bit down here that says, okay, for years, people online have been making horribly racist, sexist, homophobic, and other bigoted jokes under the guise that they're just trolling or shitposting. The problem is these jokes come at the expense of the people they're talking about. So I was around 4 or 5 years ago, and I remember the beginning of this argument, or at least the most recent incursion of this argument at the time, okay? And the argument was this, okay? The internet was full of people who were really racist. Like, really racist, okay? The internet was just chock full of people who were it still is. And they would always say, when challenged on it, that they were just making jokes. But the jokes they were making were just racism expressed humorously, okay? Now, I think a problem that leftists have is that they overcompensated on the point of an initial argument. They pivoted too hard, okay? So here's the conversation that would always take place, okay? All right? A racist person would say something racist. They would say something like, I'm not even going to speculate. You can picture it in your head, because I don't want to get clipped. You know how it is. And they would say something racist, and then a left-leaning person would say, hey, yo, that's racist. And the racist person would say, of course, well, that was a joke. You need to look at the context. And then the left-leaning person would say, the context didn't matter. You still said the racist thing. And that was never an excellent argument to begin with, but I feel like we've carried it through to a point now where people on the left have legitimately forgotten whether and to what extent context influences a message's delivery. Okay? I'll give you an example. The attack helicopter joke. Somebody just typed it up, or somebody just posted it in chat, okay? This was a really common one, okay? Somebody would make an attack helicopter joke. I identify as an attack helicopter, which, as we all know, it was funny for like 2 days, but then it was exclusively used as a transphobic joke, and so on and so forth. And from that point forward, anytime a person would make that joke, a left-leaning person would criticize it, the right-leaning person would say, it's just a joke, the left-leaning person would say, well, it doesn't matter that it was a joke, it's still racist. That's the problem, though. That's not the correct argument. Because as it turns out, the problem there isn't that jokes don't absolve the underlying message. It's that the joke didn't... The fact that it was a joke didn't make it not transphobic. But you can say a thing that stops being bigoted once you realize it's a joke. Or, in context, because it is a joke. Have you ever listened to a trans person talk about trans people? Now, I don't mean Blair White. I mean a proper, progressive, left-leaning trans person. Have you heard the jokes they tell? Seriously. Have you heard the jokes they tell? My God. Okay? And I have a lot of trans friends. And when I'm in the company of those trans friends, sometimes I will also make those jokes. There's no harm done. I'm with friends. And the reason those jokes are funny is because, and this is the key point here, none of the people hearing or expressing them are transphobic. That's what makes it funny. A good portion of humor is exactly knowing your audience. And in certain contexts, the presentation of a particular piece of information can be less or more racist than it is elsewise. I can give you another example, okay? I have many a times gone on protracted rants about the need to purify American culture, okay? Hello, Gale. This has happened in my friend group many times. Usually it is in reference to the Italians. I don't always specify that I'm talking about the Italians. I think that contextually, however, it is very apparent. Now, if you were to screenshot some of these screeds and post them out of context online, it would unironically look like I am giving a race realist or like an ethno-nationalist argument. The context absolves it. One of the problems that I have with the current trend of online cancellations is that when you screenshot one particular message, you completely eradicate all of the adjacent context that may that may exonerate or even make the content progressive. So, a classic example of this is mockery. Sometimes people will pantomime the actions of bigots to mock them. Every breadtuber has done this. There are Sean and Jen. Sean has done this. H Bomber Guy has done this. ContraPoints has done this. Lindsay Ellis has done this. If you take segments of their videos, I'm talking 5, 10, 15 seconds long, where they're imitating the behavior of a conservative and just post them out of context, and you knew nothing else about that person. Yeah, PhilosophyTube as well. And you knew nothing else about that person. They would look like a conservative. They would look quite racist, actually. I once did an entire stream on April Fool's 2020 where I pretended to be an ethno-nationalist. That was the April Fool's joke. It ran dry after 30 minutes because people in chat were taking me seriously. It's not a good joke, but I'm amazed none of the clips from that stream have made it online yet, by the way. You'd think that would have been prime clipping material, but seriously, I have no idea how. I'll have to answer for that one eventually, okay? This happens all the time. Jokes made in small communities, jokes made amongst friends, which, from an outside perspective, stripped of all context, look bad, but are actually quite progressive if inserted into their proper context. Now, I know what you're thinking right now. When we're talking about, like, oh, it's just a joke defenses, we're not talking about tiny little comments made in private circles. We're talking about public statements. And if you say a public statement that is hateful or racist, the fact that it is a joke does not exonerate it. And there is some truth to that, but it's also kind of bullshit. Here's the real question, okay? If a person makes a comment that comes off as bigoted, and you say that's bigoted, and they say that's just a joke, you know what you need to say? What's the joke? Because if you ask a left-leaning person that question, they'll give you an answer. Like Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle's made a lot of jokes that if done by a white guy with conservative leanings would not look great. You ask Dave Chappelle, what was the joke there? When you said that thing about black people, what was the joke there? Go watch the Boondocks. Black writers, right? At least most, I think. The Boondocks had black writers, right? Most, yeah. I think so. I'm pretty sure they did. There's a lot of shit in the Boondocks that I can't say. A lot of jokes, a lot of characters, a lot of moments. Blank moment. Y'all remember that bit? That I can't say it. I can't. They did. You remember? Yeah. You remember. You remember. Yeah, there you go. Thanks for typing out what I can. The N-word moment. Yeah. Now, if you went up to those writers and you asked them, what was the joke? They'll give you an answer. They'll give you an answer. Every time they'll give you an answer. And the joke is never going to be, oh, well, I just think black people are kind of stupid. No, they'll give you a good answer. And I've seen some of the behind-the-scenes interviews, the writers, the voice actors for the Boondocks, And if you actually listen to them talk about it, there is an insane amount of thought put into the delivery of jokes, which are, at their face, pretty goddamn racist. Now, there are conservatives, alt-righters, because conservatives don't understand satire, who watch that content, and they agree with it because they're very smooth brains. All the nuance and context just blasts right off it. And you can have conversations about good or bad satire, or whether or not humor is being employed responsibly. I think that's really, really important. But then we say, okay, well, we're not just talking about well-constructed racial jokes or jokes about trans people that end up being non-bigoted through explanation. What we're talking about right now is just jokes where the joke is racism. That's what we're talking about right now, okay? What about then? Does context matter there? Does a joke really absolve it? And I would answer, yeah, it does. It definitely does. And I'm going to play a little bit out to bat here. We're soaked on left. Said some racist stuff. Let me find a racist thing, okay? I'll get canceled over this. That's fine. But I think this is an illustrative example, okay? Are you guys ready for it? Illustrative example. Let me see what the best conceivable shot for this would be. Yeah, all right. Let's do it, okay? Now, I guess since I'm not clipping any other portion of this, Soaked on Left did say a lot of real racist stuff, okay? We're going to see some real racist stuff right now, okay? I'm going to let you soak it in for a second. Look at that. Never let it be said when I whitewash. Ha! The severity. I'm not saying this, by the way. I'm not having this clipped audibly. No, I kind of have to say it because some people just listen to the podcast, don't they? Okay, all right. Blacks have big lips because they need more surface area when they suck a homie's big black cock. Blacks and guns cause deaths. Now, I can run through the cycle on this one a little bit. The joke here is racism. And that's true. I think Soaked on Left even acknowledges this in the live stream that he did. The joke here is racism. You'd say, oh, well, it's a joke. Okay, well, it's the joke. The joke is racism. That's the joke. Let's see. You all understand, yes? So, yes, this is from 2 years ago. So, not that makes it good or fine. So, this is from about 2 years ago, I think. It is racist. It's from April 1st. Look at the date. Don't spoil. Please. One thing at a time. You know, it's funny that I just mentioned the 2020 April Fool's bit that I did, where I pretended to be a ethno-nationalist. You know, I wonder how much that's going to be exonerated by context. Of course, anyone in my community watching that live stream would have saw it, and at least I hope they would have recognized that this was part of a bit. Now, the context that Soaked on Left has provided here is that these were screenshotted from a broader conversation where Soaked on Left was making fun of race realists. Now, I want you all to squeeze your brains for a second. Can you do that with me? I want to engage in a little bit of analytical interpretation. We're going to do something that literature students do, okay? Can you, yeah, this, you know, like rub your brain a little bit, okay? Squeezing brain hurts. That means you're doing it right. Keep squeezing, okay? Keep squeezing the brain. No popping, keep squeezing, okay? So I want your genuine opinions on this. Now, imagine you're watching a stream of mine, and I'm going over some crazy race realist video, and I'm making fun of them. And while making fun of them, I put on a silly voice, like, this is my silly voice. And then I say these things out loud. Now, that would more or less exonerate me in context, wouldn't it? Because the joke would be that I'm ascribing silly positions to a person I'm making fun of. Admittedly, this is playing it pretty close to the vest, even for me, but in context, it would be fairly exonerated. At least I would believe that. That would be my opinion. Now, Soaked on Left has said that this was done during a broader conversation making fun of race realists, which exonerates a little bit. The fact that it's on April Fools may or may not alleviate it. I don't like April Fools being used as an excuse because you can get away with saying any old shit, can't you? You know what I mean? I mean, it's like a whole day to just say dumb shit. Like, all right, okay. But let me take the least charitable position, okay? I want to take the least charitable position possible, and then I want to distinguish it from what I would consider to be malicious racism. Let's imagine that there is no exonerating context here. This is a joke, that this was said jokingly, but the joke is just racism. That's it. In the second comment here, Soaked on Left was being blasé about socioeconomic issues that lead to black-on-black violence. And in the first one, it was just him making a joke about black people's lips and dicks. And that's it. That's just a comment about, that's it. You know? Under those circumstances, do you all find, and I'm genuinely asking, there to be any meaningful difference between these types of statements, which seem to be shock, humor, racism, and the types of statements that an actual race realist would make with regards to these basic sentiments, black on black violence and phenotypical black characteristics? I'm actually asking. Some people seem to be really divided on this. Somebody said there's a huge difference. I see people saying, no, not really. You're all waiting for my answer. I see. Put a poll up. I want to see. Yes, no. Come on. Remember, in situation one, with Soaked on Left, we're talking about shock humor being done by a generally left-leaning creator. And in the second instance, we're talking about these sentiments being expressed unironically, not as a joke, by a known race realist. There's a difference there. I see that number climbing a little bit, huh? See that number climbing a little bit. What's the question? Pay attention to the fucking stream, you idiot. What, it's like 20 seconds? You can't pay it. You can't follow? How do you watch anything that I do? Jesus. God almighty. They're mad. I'm working. Stop working. Pay attention. There are a lot of people who engage in edgy shock humor that is undeniably and objectively racist that then later go on to think, oh God, that was racist, and then they stop doing it. This does not happen with people who unironically express these sentiments. People who would say stuff like this, not as a joke, are usually very dug into incredibly far-right positions that are virtually impossible to be pulled out of. People who say this as a joke can be anything from conservative to a politically neutral South Park watching edgelord. And my God, I remember the types of jokes that I made back in high school, okay? I know for a fact that it is entirely possible, excessively possible even, to say pretty racist stuff because you're trying to be like shock humor, you know, you're trying to be ahead of the curve, trying to push the envelope, and then to go on and think about it for like 2 seconds and think, oh, wait, that was racist. And then like, yeah, I know people can do that. We're really talking then about the extent to which these logs reflect on a person's moral character and the extent to which they do harm to the world. The extent to which they do harm to the world is largely determined by the size of their platform and how seriously people take these statements. I doubt Soaked on Left said this in a way that made the people around him take this especially seriously 2 years ago, but that could just be a guess on my part. And in terms of personal moral culpability, the fact that it's dumb fuck shock humor does make it quite a bit better, at least in my mind, than an actual and deliberate effort to disseminate race realist propaganda. Does that make it good? Nah, it's still racist. But the context does matter. Does anyone really disagree with that? There are people in chat who keep arguing against a position that I don't believe. There are people in chat who keep saying, okay, but it's still bad though. How many times have I said that in this conversation? How many times need I say that? That's the kind of nuance that I want people to take on issues like this. Because if you want to hold people accountable, You can't do that unless you actually know what the problem is. And a lot of people don't. There are a lot of people on the left whose obvious unawareness of the situation leads to them making incredibly blanket statements like, the people you hurt, the harm you've caused. Well, okay, what harm? I cause harm when I drive down to the grocery store and spew carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, okay? What harm? What are we talking about? And most importantly, how do we address it? As a leftist, it is my prerogative to ensure more people become leftists, and I would not be capable of doing that if I thought that the best way to handle edgy, racist shock humor was the same way that you would best handle actual race realism disseminated by propagandists. These are two entirely different situations. These are not to be handled in the same way. Not even close. Christ. You're going to write off a huge portion of the population, a very decent portion, mind you. Young, stupid, maybe, but everyone can learn if you take that position. Can you just not make jokes on stream anymore? If we stop making jokes on stream, and if we stop making jokes publicly, we cede ground to the worst part of the left. The part that doxed SDL, the part that speculated about his family life, the part that have bullied him and harassed him in an attempt to get him off the internet, the parts that have said that they want him to kill himself. We cede territory to them. So let's not do that, actually. If a person does something bad, there are better ways to handle it than joining into the big indiscriminate mob of dipshits whose primary problem with STL was, let's be totally real here, the fact that he wasn't a tanky. How does Count Dankula fit into this equation? Count Dankula doesn't fit into it because he's not joking. Count Dankula's entire platform and political like orbit is completely made up of people who are on board with reactionary and conservative positions. I remember that the juxtaposition between those two tweets, because he's always like, this is a joke, this is a joke. He tweeted once a joke where he said essentially a progressive statement, like pro-trans people, and his entire community was like, this is bait, fuck you, this isn't real. But when he makes race realism jokes, his audience is like, bro, base, 1350. So like, okay, jokes, sure, whatever, have fun. And that's a situation where even a passing familiarity with context can be really, really helpful in identifying the harm that people do. But if you ignore all of that and just all statements are what they are with no surrounding context, then you lose the ability to best challenge anything that's going on right now. Do you agree he shouldn't have been arrested? Why are we talking about Cantaculate? No, of course not. You shouldn't be arrested for YouTube videos. What's the best way to denormalize racist jokes in online spaces in the name of edgelord culture? Are you guys ready for it? The best way to denormalize racist jokes, the online left is bad about this, okay? The best way to denormalize edgy jokes, edgy racist jokes, is to give them different edgy jokes to make. There are a lot of people in the online left who are like, you need to call it out when you see it. And yeah, sure, but edgy boy's gonna edgy boy. That's a part of humanity, baby. That's not going away. Give them something else edgy to talk about. Make them edgy about class issues. Make them edgy about eating the rich. If people are going to make edgy jokes, I would way rather than be prejudiced against the United States of America, the police, the military, or wealth than I would then be prejudiced against like black people or trans people. Give them other material. That's the whole point of the dirtbag left, isn't it? Except I feel like I'm the only person part of the dirtbag left who meant that as I'm in favor of pulling over these groups of people, and a lot of other people seem to think the dirtbag left means being like Bernie or bust or some shit. I don't know. Do you not think eat the rich makes socialists look worse? If you were to choose between a 14-year-old saying eat the rich and a 14-year-old saying attack helicopter jokes, I would choose them saying eat the rich. That's my personal opinion. Maybe we can sand a little bit more nuance into their positions with time, but if I have to make that hardline choice about stupid, discriminatory, edgy jokes being made, I'd rather those stupid, edgy, discriminatory jokes be made against power groups, you know? Now, are there better ways to handle that? Sure, but the question is how accurately and how coordinatedly, how well coordinated, can you adjust the behavior of, like, teenagers? Not very well. Like a herd of animals they are.